So what I'm going to be talking about is University of Wollongong has introduced a research masters that is as a research pathway. That's an alternative to end on honours. So it's similar to what Nick has introduced at Macquarie University and it's also been introduced at Western Sydney University. That's not really the focus of what I'm talking about today. I'm going to talk about the process of change at UOW and how we actually set this up and went through all the process over a very long period of time, 2 years really. All right, so just a quick summary of what you're probably familiar with what this is. So it's really the Bologna type research training master's idea where it's a 2-year research training degree. There's 1 year of research training and coursework, and then there's a 1-year thesis in the second year. As I said, it's very similar to the structure of the program at Macquarie University and Western Sydney, and we've commenced this degree, this session just completing was our first session. And I guess the difference at UOW compared to Macquarie and Western Sydney is that we haven't abolished end on honours. I probably wasn't influential enough to be able to do that, but we're operating both programs in tandem. So students have a choice. And schools and faculties really have a choice too about how keen and enthusiastic they are about this degree. So it's an ongoing, to make a success of a program. There's a lot of work getting it set up and getting it on the books and so forth and so on, but then there's still a lot of ongoing work after that to make it a success, to the hearts and minds idea, I guess, about getting the students interested in the program, getting the staff on board and so forth and so on. So let's look at a timeline. So I think it's worth looking at that. The timeline's really 2 years, okay? So for something major like this, if you're thinking about introducing a major initiative, you really have to be realistic and set yourself probably a 2-year timeline. There's a number of reasons for that. One is that, first of all, you need to be able to convince the university and the faculties that what you're doing is a good idea, and so that takes a lot of discussion with key players and a lot of presentations and a lot of strategic documents to do that. Then the processes in our university for course approval are very tough and very long as well. So there's the combination of the bureaucratic processes that we have in our institutions, plus probably the more important aspect of, the communication and convincing people of your ideas that is actually worthwhile to proceed with. And so just the timeline here, March 2015 for this talk, I look back through my emails and my folders to actually fix these dates. So the initial strategic proposal was circulated in March 15, and that went to, at that stage, I think I just went to the Associate Deans of Research within the university to get some initial feedback from them. But after that, it has to get much broader. It has to go to all the heads of school, all the faculty deans, all the heads of postgraduate studies, and all the Associate Deans for Education as well. And so you have to then be very broad with your initial strategic proposal. So that percolated, I guess, for a little while. And then the mechanism I used was a cross-faculty working party. So this working party had somebody from each faculty on it. We had a mix. It wasn't just Associate Dean's Research, because in this space here, with this kind of initiative, it involves new degrees. So it cuts across the teaching space for the university and also the research space. And so this working party had people with a mix of roles that had some Associate Deans teaching, some Associate Deans research, some heads of school, okay, and some professional staff as well. So when you're, putting forward your initiatives, I think you need to be able to speak to a broad audience. It can't just be your set of counterparts in other faculties or your set of, equivalent positions within academics. You have to cut across the whole space within the university in terms of a whole range of roles. And so, so that was the first stage. And then once you get some, and there's a lot of negotiation there, and you find out most most people in the faculties are very happy with end-on honours, thank you very much, and they don't really want to change, and that, you know, it's been around for quite a long time, and even if you present the data that, look, you know, the numbers of students doing end-on honours isn't very high, and the numbers progressing onto PhDs hasn't increased for, you know, 2 decades. Even when you present them with that strategic information that the degree isn't really working as it should be, they're very resistant. And so I guess my approach was to say, well, okay, so we're not taking that away from you, but we're going to give the students a choice. And so we're going to offer this additional program that may appeal to different cohorts of students. The Masters will appeal more to international students that you're not capturing in end-on honours programs. It'll appeal to you know, mature age students that are returning to study that are more interested in a master's degree than end-on honours as well. So the argument there is you're giving them something extra, okay, and you know, giving them opportunity to get more, hopefully more PhD students in the end. Okay, so that's the arguments I use, that we're giving you something new, we're not taking something away. And that's always an easier argument than trying to take something away from people. So that's the approach I used. And then once you get that kind of, you know, fairly general agreement that, you know, it can go forward, then you have to get into the processes of the course approvals. And this is where your role cuts across to the Associate Deans of Teaching. So, you know, I look back, the eventual proposal was 172 pages long, involved 4 new subjects, 30 different specialisations. There was an external assessment committee. There was 3 or 4, you know, various steps in the course approval process. Look, I probably could have written a couple of papers for nature or science in that time. But, you know, it's that kind of magnitude of task. There's a lot of feedback along the way, there's a lot of positive criticism, there's a lot of negative criticism as well, and you just have to take that on the chin and keep revising and keep putting your ideas forward until you get that approved. And it's not easy, and I'm sure Nick and other people in the audiences that have gone through this process, you just have to keep plugging away, okay? And so that was completed in the end of last year, so the middle of last year, and then the degree commenced. But as I'll explain on, you know, in a minute, there's still work to do. So let's look at some of the elements I think that you need to use for this kind of change. Okay, and so I'll say at the beginning what I did wrong. I did this really as a one-man band. I did this all myself, and I didn't involve enough others within the university to help me along that journey, I think. So that's probably the mistake. We got there in the end, but that's probably the mistake that I made. You need to involve others with this journey, probably more than I did. Our structure has changed a little bit now. We have a new Associate Dean for Graduate Research in our Graduate Research School, and so that, going forward now to make this degree a success, there are more team members to rely on and help support you along the way. So that's the thing I would say at the beginning. Don't try and do it all yourself. Do involve others in the group. It has to be a team. So what are some of the elements you need to do something as major as this? Communication. Pat's already spoken about this. You have to talk with faculties, student services, course management groups, many other units. There's many, many complicated and moving parts with this kind of thing you have to have people get confused about the concept. It was quite a complicated degree to introduce because it had this dual undergraduate, postgraduate nature to it with the Bachelor of Research / Master of Research, where domestic students in the first year enrol in an honours level bachelor degree. That's for, to have a Commonwealth supported place in that first year. This dual nature and hybrid nature was very confusing for many people in the university in terms of systems. Should the students be treated as, undergraduate students or postgraduate students when they submit their application and things like that, just simple things like that, because there's different processes for that within the university. And so you have to explain. I found myself having to explain the concepts and the complexities many times. That was within the probably the central units of student services and course management. For the faculties, they're okay with that mechanism, but I had to explain and refine my arguments about why the degree was worthwhile many times. I had to do the work and they would say, yes, fine, but we don't have the units for that, we don't have the coursework, we don't want to teach anything new while we're doing this. And then I had to do a lot of work in trying to find those units and come up with programs for each of the specialisations. So there's that communication side of things. I'm just trying to keep track on time. Knowledge. So this cuts across many different areas. You need to understand government policies, university policies relating to funding, research, teaching, course and subject design. The policy directory will be your friend. People will put objections up or queries where they won't understand something, and they'll say, you can't do this because of reason X. And you need to know your policies inside out to say, sorry, that's not true, you can do it because of this reason, that reason, whatever. Okay, so you need to be a policy expert. An interesting thing was that in developing this, my normal relationships and my role are probably with the Associate Dean's research, but this really moves across to the teaching side of the university. So I found that my relationships with Associate Dean's education became much stronger because they're the people I had to negotiate with in terms of course programs and the paperwork and learning outcomes and things like that. And so that side of you had to touch base with a much different kind of peer group. And then there's the politics, okay? A lot of people will say that, it's really a Trojan horse and you want to abolish end-on honours and all this kind of stuff. So I had to really try and convince people that I was genuine and that I genuinely believe students should have a choice and that kind of thing. So people will get very defensive if you try and take away what they've got already. Post-introduction. So, as I said, just because the degree appears on your university page and students can enrol, that's not really the end of the story with introducing a big new initiative. You have to do some marketing for the degree and for the faculties to try and convince students to enrol in the degree. Every application, because it's this complexity between the hybrid nature of the undergraduate, postgraduate degree, every application of a potential new student, many issues with the form of the offers, the amount of advanced standing that could be given, that kind of stuff. And all those issues would come into my email, and then I would be negotiating with students and faculties and admissions officers about what changes need to be made to the offers. Obviously you can't do that. You can only do that at the beginning when the numbers are fairly small. As the numbers build up, hopefully experience grows. We still have issues to do with electives and specialisations to fully embed some of the elective options and coursework options within the faculties. One of the big issues was that end-on honours at our university is not uniform. Okay, so in some faculties, end-on honours will comprise, we have 48 credit points in a year, so in some faculties, end-on honours would comprise 3/4 of that, 36 credit points with a small project. In other faculties, they would just do a full just project, no coursework at all. And so sometimes end-on honours is quite compatible with this new model. In other faculties, it wasn't compatible. So there's many kind of compatibility issues there. Most staff still favour the honours pathway for domestic students, but we're chipping away. Like many issues here, it's a matter of giving students choice and staff choice. Even when they, at the beginning, they say no students will ever do this, once it's actually available, things change. And people say, well, okay, perhaps, this student, that will suit them. And so forth and so on. So you need to be persistent and you need to be able to chip away at attitudes and issues over time as well. That's the end of my presentation. So perhaps I'll take a few questions now and then we'll move on to the second half of the